Guys, welcome to Better Bachelor. My name is Joker with a face for radio and a voice for print. I wanted to do a video today, but I'm on the way to my property, so I'm trying to kill two birds with one stone. I hope my audio is okay. I'll upload it directly, and I'm sure you guys will let me know in the notes if it sucks. I'm digging post holes today, and I'm putting in a mailbox, and I'm getting my solar array adjusted. And then half that solar array, I'm probably going to move to the men's retreat. Come on, dude, go, idiot. I'm probably going to move half of it to the men's retreat. So it's kind of a trial run to see if I like the product. Anyway, I made the thumbnail for the Bud Light thing, uploaded it to my email, and then I'll save it to my phone and upload it as we go. You know, one of the things that I've noticed is everybody going absolutely bananas over this Budweiser thing. And I think it's kind of interesting, but I also think it's somewhat important. I think it's the first time a vast majority of people that are pushing back against the LDHD TV community has come together and found a large enough rallying cause that it actually makes a difference. Many times we talk about something and it's like Gillette razor, and that was enough to get a little bit of attention from people. Enough to where I've never bought a Gillette razor since. But it wasn't like a big cause. But Bud Light, I remember drinking that crap in college and back when I was 18, 19 in the military because it was cheap and it did the job. I haven't drank it since, I don't think, only simply because I like good quality beer and I just don't find it to be good quality. But I think this has blown up and gone crazy because it's a rallying cry for people that don't have a voice to push back against all the narrative, all the crap, and everything that's been piled on them. And, the interview that came out with the vice president of marketing, she came out and said, oh, we're trying to get rid of the frat boy image of Bud Light. Or maybe she said frat party, something like that, image of Bud Light. And we want to move it to a new market, a younger market, a more diverse market. And I think it's a culmination of everybody feeling that things are being taken from them and they're being pushed this message without having any say in it. And I've said many, many, many times, vote with your dollars. And I think it's actually starting to work because we see movies out there, like a lot of the Disney stuff now, Marvel movies, they're barely breaking even or in many cases losing money. But then you see something like the new Mario movie that came out that looks like it's going to be breaking animation or animated box office records. And they're doing stories about that, about, hey, let's champion this thing because it doesn't push the message. Same thing with Top Gun Maverick, did really well. And I forget, there was another movie or two, John Wick, that came out. So Hollywood is doing well when it does a good story and it's not chasing after the message. But when it's chasing after the message, it's failing. And I think this is key because so many times we talk about, World War III and the Civil War and all this other stuff. And what it really boils down to is this war is being fought for the ideology of our country. And it's not being fought with weapons. It's not being fought with lead flying through the air. It's being fought with information, disinformation, messaging, campaigns, and who's going to be on the quote-unquote right side of history. And our politicians are listening to that instead of their constituents. So if they get a little bit of pressure on Twitter or they see some certain things trending on Facebook, they believe that this is what the culture wants, that this speaks for everybody, not realizing that probably 70, 80, 90% of people don't bother either being on social media or posting anything to it, or doing anything about it. And so this Bud Light campaign is now big enough that it's shot across Twitter, and then it made its way onto mainstream news outlets, and now it's being written in articles. And the left is pushing it, saying, oh, I thought you guys didn't believe in cancel culture, and it's not making that big a difference anyway. And the right is bragging that ABV stock is down, 2.5% in the last 3 days, which really is nothing. I've seen many of my stocks fluctuate more than that. And we won't see the real impact of this for another several months, probably by the next quarterly reports done by Budweiser. But every day that people decide to, kind of protest and say, I'm not going to be buying this product ever again, every day is a day that Anheuser-Busch loses money. And that's cumulative, which is a good thing. I think a lot of people need to realize that if you're going to make this a full success, it's not just not buying Bud Light. It's also not buying anything that Anheuser-Busch makes. And they make, 60 different beers. So again, this is one of those issues where if you really want to do this right, you need to go on Anheuser-Busch's webpage, look up all the brands that you drink, and then say, I'm not going to drink that anymore. I'm going to change to something else. I'm going to change to something else. And then make sure that that is not on the list if you really want to do this right. So I think this is important, and it's gaining so much traction because I think people have had enough. And I think that now the LDHD TV and the shows going, the drag shows going for kids and all these other issues are starting to become mainstream enough that now people are getting upset. The problem is when they get upset, their voices aren't making it to the news. Their voices aren't being spread around social media because they don't want that message to go out there. If you guys have watched my video, I did a video on the Ash conformity test, and that's where they had 20 people in a line, and one person was the real subject, and they had 19 actors, and they had a graph, a bar chart, showing A, B, C, and D lines of different lengths, and they were asking people to tell me which length of line is correct, and the people would pick, all the actors would pick the wrong line. And then when it came to the person that was not an actor that was part of this study, and they said, pick a line, something like 60% of the people chose the same line that everybody else did. In other words, they didn't have the conviction to stand up for what they truly believed. They went along with the crowd. And that's why it's so important that social media controls the narrative, that the fake news controls the narrative, because they don't want you to hear all the other voices standing up and saying what they perceive as the right answer, because it'll make you more comfortable in saying the right answer. And that's why they shut down so much speech on the internet. That's why they want to do even more so going forward. If you look at this bill that the Biden administration put forth about banning TikTok, it had nothing to do with banning TikTok. It was giving the right for the government to come in and sniff all the information that you were using on the web and make it illegal to use a VPN, and that if you spread the wrong kind of information or misinformation, or and you used a VPN, they could come in and charge you something like $1 million. I mean, this is where this civil war, whatever you want to call it, this is where it's being fought. So going forward, guys, I want you to kind of remember a couple of things. Number one, vote with your dollar, even if it's inconvenient, even if it makes you suffer just a little bit, because let's face it, if you go back and look at our government, at least here in the United States, our forefathers, they lost their homes. Some of their residences were burned to the ground. Some lost their lives. Some lost their families. Some lost their sons. Some lost their freedom. And in the meantime, we're sitting here saying, yeah, we want to win the culture war and this is important to us, but we won't give up our favorite brand of ice cream. Or we won't stop going to, drinking Coke, even though they said stop being so white. Because people forget. And they say, oh, it's been a couple weeks and no one cares anymore. And they go right back to it. I think with this Bud Light thing, though, it's big enough and it's become loud enough and it's become popular enough to push back against Bud Light and Anheuser-Busch. That's why it's gaining traction, because enough people are now virtue signaling, saying, look at me, I'm also dumping all my Bud Light. Or like Kid Rock, I'm taking in my fully automatic whatever he has and throwing lead through a case of beer that cost him $10 or $15, like an 18-pack, throwing some lead through it. Yeah, he's virtue signaling, but he's also popular enough that it's sending a message, and he has enough fans, enough people that say, you know what, I'm going to be on this too. And that's what the left does so successfully, is they want a virtue signal, so they all step up in unison and have a voice. And this, I think, for the first time, is any real pushback where either conservatives or more liberal people or people that are tired of the left craziness, they're saying, you know, we have a voice too, and I want a virtue signal, and there's enough popular people pushing back against this that I can get on this cause. And now it's bled over into the news, and now it's even bleeding over into bars where people are ordering a Bud Light, and people are joking with them saying, oh, I see you're drinking transmission fluid. When are you having your testicles removed? So people are getting shamed out of using the product. And as long as we keep this going and continue to add to the list, this is where we start getting pushback, and that stops companies and brands from following down this train. And in turn, that means the money stops. And that means that the companies that do this get punished. And that means that they stop doing the virtue signaling and the woke ads and everything else. And this means that the members in government see that there is a large backlash and say, hey, you know what? Okay, there's some other voices out here we haven't been hearing, and these voices are really loud too. Maybe I need to shut up and sit down and just be middle of the road on this stuff. And we need to keep pushing back all the way up the chain. Now, it doesn't mean this is going to change anything, because the crazies have taken over the colleges, they've taken over the schools, they've taken over many of the institutions, they've taken over a lot of the businesses, they've taken over a lot of the marketing, they've taken over social media, they're taking over everything. But the quote-unquote revolution has to start from somewhere. And I think many people see this Bud Light campaign as the maybe not the spark, but at least one of the first, one of the first signals of smoke in the culture war getting some pushback. I think that's why it's so important. I think that's why people are talking about it. I think that's why they're excited about it. And many of us guys, we've been pushing back for years against various things such as marriage and divorce court and some relationships and some women being bad. This is just the same thing, except it's just a much bigger cause. So I think we're used to this. I don't think many of you drink Bud, and if you do, I'd invite you to try some other brands that actually, yes, they're a little bit more expensive, but if you think about it, I think alcohol by volume, I think Bud Light or Bud or those, they're like 3.2% alcohol by volume. It's not a lot of alcohol, and it's not a lot of flavor. It's not a really good beer. I would invite you to go out and buy a 4 or 6 pack of something that is a little bit more expensive by maybe a local brewery that has the same values or at least isn't on this craziness. And man, I just picked up a can from or a brew that I was drinking during Saturday night at the movies that we do over on Locals with you guys. I just picked up a 4 or 6 pack of that. It's 8% alcohol by volume. I've got another one that is 10% alcohol by volume. Yeah, they're a stronger, flavorful beer, but I can drink one of those beers and get the same kind of relaxation and buzz, if that's kind of what you're after, because I can't see why else you'd drink Bud Light. You can get the same relaxation and buzz from one beer versus 3 or 4 of Bud Light. You're running to the bathroom less, you're drinking something that tastes better, and you're actually supporting a company that maybe cares about you or your ideals a little bit more. So that's my thoughts on the whole thing. I know it's probably so effed out by this point that many of you don't even tune in to check out this video, but I think for those of you that do, tell me if I'm right, tell me if I'm wrong. Does any of this resonate with you? Do you see this being maybe the catalyst that starts the pushback? I'd love to hear what you guys think about it. We'll talk to you in the next one.